tarde. Boa tarde. Esse é o Poesia ao Meio Dia, promovido pela Cátedra William Butler Yeats, da Faculdade de Filosofia, Letras e Ciências Humanas da Universidade de São Paulo, uma parceria com a Embaixada da Irlanda. E hoje temos, como de costume, a nossa querida Susan Roy a nos trazer um pouco da poesia irlandesa. E esse evento acontece sempre na última quarta-feira do mês, ao meio-dia, com o objetivo de promover a poesia irlandesa. Então, o tema desse mês nos parece ser a saudade, um tema bastante comum entre a comunidade lusófona. Então, eu passo a palavra a Susan Roy, por favor. You have the word.
Okay. Bom dia a todos e todas. As usual, I am delighted to be here with you today. This month's selection of poetry has been inspired by the visit of President Joe Biden to Ireland, which happened almost 2 weeks ago now. The main purpose of his visit to Ireland was to celebrate 25 years since the Good Friday Agreement was signed. The Good Friday Agreement, which is also known as the Belfast Agreement, was a political deal designed to bring an end to the 30 years of violent conflict in Northern Ireland, which was known as the Troubles. It was signed on the 10th of April 1998 and approved by public votes in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. However, Joe Biden's ancestors came from Ballina, which is my hometown. They emigrated from there, and Joe Biden has got a great feeling and love for our town, and he already visited a few years ago when he was vice president. And so he ended up his tour in Ireland with a visit to our town, and he addressed the public. There was a crowd of about 27,000 people there. And during his final address here, he said, "Being back in Ballina, it feels like coming home." And indeed, his whole visit to Ballina was called the Homecoming. And so I was thinking about this, and the idea of longing for home and leaving home made me think about poems which address this issue. And as Gisele was saying, like an issue that's very common with Brasileiros, this missing out, missing home, especially now that we have so many Brazilians in Ireland. I'm sure they're all missing this beautiful country of Brazil as well. So I usually start off this session with a poem from Yeats. However, I found this poem, which is indeed entitled The Homecoming, by a poet called John F. McCullough. And he wrote it about the return of Yeats's body to its resting place, which is now in Drumcliff in County Sligo. And I thought that might be a nice way to look at this whole issue of coming home and how it feels to actually arrive there. The Homecoming by John F. McCullough. His wife, George, was present with flowers. Anne and Michael, his children, were there. A headstone had been carved at the quarry. Now all waited on Yeats to appear. Soft and damp was that day in the graveyard, with the scent of turned earth in the air. Beyond rose the bulk of Ben Bulben, as the lurry with the poet drew near. 10 years he had slept in his coffin, while the great nation states played at war. Now, Sean McBride, the son of his rival, brought him home where he'd not been before. At his birth, Yeats was a British subject. By his death, a dominion was here. Now, they laid him to rest in the Free State, in the newly minted Republic of Eire. My next poem is by a noted Gaelic scholar, a pioneer of the Irish language, whose name is Tomás Ó Flangáile, or Thomas Flannery in English. And he was an established poet, editor, and translator. He was actually born in Ballinrobe in County Mayo. There's a little bit of a Mayo theme and West of Ireland theme running through my poems today, as per usual. But his family emigrated to England when he was 8 years old, and he wrote this well-known poem, The County of Mayo, which maybe President Biden's family felt all those years ago when they too emigrated. The County of Mayo by Tomás Ó Flangáile. On the deck of Patrick Lynch's boat I sat in deep despair, with the crying of the weary night and the weeping of the day. Were it not that full of sorrow from my people forth I go, by the blessed sun, 'tis royally I'd sing thy praise, Mayo. When I dwelt at home in plenty, thy gold did much abound. In the company of fair young maids, the Spanish ale went round. It's a bitter change from those gay days that now I'm forced to go and leave my bones on Santa Cruz, far away from sweet Mayo. They are changed girls in Eris now, how tall they've grown and high, with their top knots and their handbags, sure I pass their buckles by. For it's now I hear their airs, for God has willed it so, that I must leave and go, all far away from sweet Mayo. It's my grief that Pat O'Loughlin is not Earl of Eris still, and that Brian Duff no longer rules as Lord upon the hill, and that Colonel Hugh O'Grady should be dead and lying low, and I sailing swiftly from the County of Mayo. Next up, it's a poem that beautifully expresses the poet's yearning to return to Ireland. Catherine Tynan was born in County Dublin in 1859, but she moved to England soon after she was married. As well as writing poetry, she wrote about 100 novels, I think, and she was a very close friend of W.B. Yeats. And she wrote this poem called The Foggy Dew. And the Foggy Dew is a very well-known term in Ireland. There are many famous tunes and songs. And the Foggy Dew is that mist or that soft day that we talk about in Ireland when it's raining and it's damp, but you can still be out and see through this dew. So, The Foggy Dew by Catherine Tynan. A splendid place is London, with golden store, for them that had the heart and hope and youth galore. but mournful are its streets to me, I tell you true. For I'm longing sore for Ireland in the foggy dew. The sun he shines all day here, so fierce and fine, never a wisp of mist at all to dim his shine. The sun he shines all day here from the skies of blue. He hides his face in Ireland in the foggy dew. The maids go out to milking in the pastures grey. The sky is green and golden at the dawn of the day. And in the deep drenched meadows, the hay lies new, and the corn is turning yellow in the foggy dew. Mavrone, if I might feel now that dew on my face, and the wind from the mountains in that remembered place, I'd give the wealth of London if it were mine to do, and I'd travel home to Ireland and the foggy dew. And I guess in that poem, she's talking a lot about, you know, those simple things that we miss about home, whether it's the weather or just the feel of the sunshine or the wind or the sound of the sea. You know, sometimes it's a lot of things about our actual nature and where we come from that we miss most, as well as the people that live there. I came upon this interesting poem, which is written by an English aristocrat. His name is John George Edward Henry Douglas Sutherland Campbell, who is known as the 9th Duke of Argyll, to give him his proper title. He published his first books of poetry in 1875. And although he's an English aristocrat, I think that he captures very well this essence of what it feels to be an Irish immigrant longing for home in the 1850s or in the 1880s. So I'm going to read his poem for you today, and it's simply called The Irish Emigrant, 1880, by John Campbell. Look not for me at eventide, I cannot come when work is done. I go to wander far and wide, for 'tis not here that gold is won. Perchance, where'er I go, these hands may find me what I need to live. Whate'er they win, if house or lands, I'd yield for what they cannot give. For who can turn away his face from home and kin and be at rest? What country e'er can take the place that Ireland fills within my breast? More kindly smile the distant skies. They say beyond you, angry sea. I know not what they mean. Mine eyes have never seen these frown on me. To me, these hills beside the wave with every year have dearer grown. Is it so great a thing to crave, to call my native land mine own? But why these useless plaints renew? Farewell, that word, it seems a knell. If still I'm dear, kind hearts, to you, 'tis all I ask. Farewell, farewell. My next poem jumps back into the present, and and it's written by an acclaimed Irish poem who is currently writing and publishing in Ireland. Her name is Jane Clark. She grew up on a farm in County Roscommon in the west of Ireland, and she now lives in County Wicklow. Her first collection was called The River, and it's from that collection that my next poem was taken. It was inspired by her visit to a particular museum on the Lower East Side of New York called the Tenement Museum. And in this museum, it was evoking the lives of many Irish women and their families who had to emigrate to New York. And I suppose they felt like that there was wonderful life waiting for them. And in fairness, many of these Irish women ended up in tenements in New York, or actually came from tenements in Dublin. So I think this poem is evoking this feeling, this longing, this loneliness, the regrets of the women. And the poet says that it's actually a pantoum, which is a form of poetry which is written in, it's written as a poem that uses repeated lines throughout the poem. And ideally, these repeated lines, the words remain exactly the same, but the meaning is changed simply by shifting the pronunciation or recontextualizing the words. So it's a very interesting poem, and I hope you enjoy it. And it's called On the Boat by Jane Clark. On the boat, we were mostly virgins. We talked about who we were going to be: waitresses, seamstresses, nurses. We didn't talk about why we had to leave. We talked about where we were going to be: the wooden frame house with a picket fence. But we didn't talk about why we had to leave. As we touched the lockets around our necks. The wooden frame house with a picket fence led to talk of lost villages, lost streets, as we touched the lockets around our necks. We didn't foresee the tenements that grew thick as trees when we talked of lost villages, lost streets, and the diligent men we were going to marry. We didn't foresee tenements that grew thick as trees, the suitcase of memories we would have to carry to the diligent men we were going to marry, when we were waitresses, seamstresses, nurses, nor the suitcases of memories we would have to carry from the boat, where we were mostly virgins. Going back to President Biden's visit, the former president of Ireland, Mary Robinson, who is also a native of Ballina, told Mr. Biden about the famous light in the window, which is in the Irish presidential official residence in Áras an Uachtaráin in Dublin. And this is just a small light which is visible from the main road outside the Áras. And it's a symbolic light which is, it's like a beacon which is lighting the way for Irish immigrants and their descendants, welcoming them back to their homeland. And it was inspired by Evan Boland's poem. President Robinson has now taken this light, the original light from the Áras, in Dublin and placed it in Ballina in a new centre, which is the Mary Robinson Centre, and now a replica like burns in the Oris. And as she met President Biden, she was telling him this story and how she had been inspired by the immigrant Irish. Mrs. Robinson was a good friend of Evan Boland's. And before she recited this poem, she said that it was a difficult poem. It's about the fact that we didn't always value our immigrants. We didn't cherish them enough. We didn't feel they were part of our wider family. And I suppose we looked with some shame at the number of people that left our country during the very difficult times throughout our history. This is one of the issues that Evan addresses in her very famous poem, which I'm now going to read for you, The Emigrant Irish by Evan Boland. Like oil lamps, we put them out the back of our houses, of our minds. We had lights better then, newer then, and then a time came, this time, and now we need them. Their dread makeshift example. They would have thrived on our necessities. What they survived, we could not even live. By their lights now, it is time to imagine how they stood there, what they stood with, that their possessions may become our power. Cardboard, iron, their hardships parcelled in them, patience, fortitude, long suffering in the bruise-coloured dusk of the new world, and all the old songs, and nothing to lose. This is it's a very, very deep poem, and I think Evan has really used the symbolism there of the light that was lost during this dark period of immigration in Ireland's history. And Gisele, who introduced us today, was telling me that she worked on a translation of this into Portuguese with her students. So I'm sure that they had a lot of fun and also difficulty translating the actual feeling behind those lines. Because as Mrs. Robinson said in Ballina, it's a very difficult poem, and a difficult poem to even read and recite. Anyway, continuing on with the current, my last poem is written by Imelda May, and she is an Irish music artist who published her first collection of poetry in 2020, and she called it You Don't Get to Be, the collection is called A Lick and a Promise, which was the old Irish way of a quick wipe of your face with a cloth if you were going out somewhere. And the title of the poem is You Don't Get to Be Racist in Irish. And this documents Irish people's history of immigration and emigration. And the poet says that it's now time for Irish people to return the favour and to welcome the people who have arrived on our shores into our land, into our homes, into our hearts. The poem touches on Ireland's history and heritage, pointing out the hypocrisy of singing songs and glorifying Irish freedom, the famine and martyrs in the struggle for Irish independence, while we're simultaneously ignoring or looking down on people who, I guess, they're now suffering. It's also about the suffering that Irish people endured as they helped to build cities across the world, and the prejudice and the discrimination that they received. She also refers to a slogan which was very common in England and in America: no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. And that was very, very common in shop windows in Britain in the mid-20th century. But she has very cleverly changed this to a much more open and embracing slogan: more blacks, more dogs, more Irish. I hope you enjoy this poem. You Don't Get to Be Racist and Irish by Imelda May. You don't get to be racist and Irish. You don't get to be proud of your heritage, plights, and fight for freedom while kneeling on the neck of another. You're not entitled to sing songs of heroes and martyrs, mothers and fathers who cried as they starved in a famine, or of brave-hearted, soft-spoken poets and artists lined up in a yard, blindfolded and bound, waiting for Godot and the point blank to sound. We emigrated, we immigrated, we took refuge, so cannot refuse when it's our time to return the favor. Land stolen, spirits broken, bodies crushed and swollen, unholy tokens of Christ nailed to a tree that you hang round your neck like a noose of the free. Our colour pasty, our accents think, hands like shovels from mortar and bricklaying foundations of cities. You now stand upon, our suffering seeps from every stone. Your opportunities arrive from outstanding on the shoulders of your forefathers and foremothers who bore your mother's mother. Our music is for the righteous. Our joys have been earned, well deserved, and served to remind us to remember. More blacks, more dogs, more Irish. Still labelled leprechauns, micks, paddies, louts, we're shouting to tell you our land, our laws are progressively out there. We're in a chrysalis state of emerging into a new and more beautiful era, 40 shades better, unanimous in our rainbow vote. We found our stereotypical pot of gold, and my God, it's good. So join us, 'cause you don't get to be racist and Irish. So now I'd like to leave you today with an Irish song. It's a very old Irish song, but was rewritten by Pádraig Pearse to welcome Gráinne Whale, the famous pirate and Queen of Connacht, back home. It's called Óró sé de bhathawáile, and Óró is a cheer, and sé de bhathawáile translates as you're welcome home. So I'm going to leave you today with this video. I hope you've enjoyed my selection of poems, and that you will continue to join us during this little slot. Thank you to everyone who helped today, and please do enjoy this piece of music.
Bar